All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with happy Drew Dinsick, recording on Monday afternoon, home from Louisiana. I'm in Stanford, Drew back in Long Beach. Patrick Surtain's jersey hangs behind me. He was the only member of the AFC West to win anything this past week, so I felt it was fitting. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl, naturally, look ahead to the Super Bowl market next year, and then talk NBA, looking at the West outright market, the overall outright market, and then some make-miss playoff prices in the West. Drew, where I want to start with the Super Bowl. These teams played again next week, and let's say same health situation, Chris Jones is fine. What do you think the line would be?
So they each have a chance to make adjustments, or do you just want to know how the market changes its perception based on the result? Because I think
market changes.
Yeah. Eagles -3.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. The Eagles, it turns out they are the monsters. And in particular, I think the fact that they were so effective at winning the 1v1s in the trenches with their D-line against what turned out to be a problem for, particularly, in the early going there. It was pretty stark and obvious that was a mismatch that they could continue to prey on. And, if the Eagles could, they didn't really have to do much to stop the run, in part because the game state never even allowed the Chiefs to explore run concepts. But even more than that, the quick pressures and, the relentless pursuit of Mahomes, who was doing a nice job at times of avoiding and breaking out of the pocket and kind of trying to, do his elusive elongate the play. It was such a group effort, and there were so many, just voracious bodies and, guys winning that, it all came apart at the seams for the Chiefs offense. And, the Hurts part of the conversation is fun because, he was just, I thought at least, played one of his best games as a pro, and, really just made a lot of the right decisions, particularly, in the moments where, they kind of gave themselves some serious space on the scoreboard. And, we've known for a while that he was capable of doing that sort of thing. He played a similarly, outstanding game in the loss to the Chiefs 2 years ago. And so, clearly the moment was not too big for him. And the overall kind of professionalism that the Eagles had, I had the sense was building over the course of the week last year, really kind of manifest, where, this was very much unfinished business for them after losing 2 years ago. And the focus and purpose with which they played was pretty incredible. As we were kind of getting close to halftime, I was like, this was a very average performance for the Eagles offense, outside of Hurts being pretty clutch, delivering, some nice balls downfield, pretty clutch at being able to operate while being, blitzed at times. It was really the Eagles defense, and the fact that unit stands above all others as kind of the best unit of, this season, I think is worthy that they're the champions.
Yeah, I thought Hurts is an interesting game from Hurts, where I thought in the first half, I didn't think he was great because I think the blitz did rattle him a little bit. He throws the bad pick. He also, there were plays negated by penalty as well. He got rattled by the blitz when Omenahu was an inch offside. And then in the second half, I thought he was masterful. And it really felt like he kind of understood or accepted in a really positive way that maybe he wasn't smart enough to solve the blitz passing the ball. And so when the blitz came, he'd just take off. And that was clearly the right thing to do. And he was hugely successful with it. And I do think the thing with Hurts, who I do think has, flaws as a quarterback, most notably his inability over the years to solve the blitz, which came to the fore most prominently in that playoff game against the Bucs last year, even if he did find an answer for it in the second half here, is that you say what you want about him, but it does seem like his heart rate does slow down in big moments. And I don't think anyone is really going to accuse him of, shrinking from moments. Think about the first half of last season when he moved into like plus 120 to win MVP. It was just marked by these just clutch fourth quarter drives over and over again to beat the Chiefs and the Bills, most notably. He was fantastic in the first Super Bowl outside of the one horrible mistake where he handed the Chiefs a touchdown. Outside of that, he was pretty much perfect. And then against the Chiefs on Sunday, again, he played really well overall. What stood out to me in a way the most watching this game was how bad is Buffalo's defense? The Chiefs had 98th percentile success rate passing the ball against the Bills, and with seemingly like this Eagles pass rush is awesome, but I don't think people aren't talking about this pass rush in the vein of like, Strahan and Tuck or Tuck Humaniora, like these, or even like the Texans pass rush. And Akaya Elam and Cole Bishop just that bad that Mahomes was just able to get the ball out so quickly against guys creating separation so quickly. Because how do you square Kansas City's passing performance against Buffalo compared to the performance against the Eagles?
I mean, the Buffalo defense had moments of terrible play this season where they were just getting, it was about this. It was the same guys. But the one part that I think the important, ingredient in the recipe of what happened in the AFC title game was the home field advantage. Just the fact that the Chiefs offensive line, had the crowd and in general what is afforded by playing at Arrowhead helped neutralize the pass rush for both the Texans and the Bills in their 2 playoff wins. And it was I think that the time off for the Eagles and really just the kind of the mentality that those pass rushers brought to the table, and the fact that they could rotate fresh bodies in, and you had your leader in Brandon Graham back, like that group really put together a very special day. And we know they have some incredibly talented players. Like it's not a surprise that Josh Sweat is very, very good. Like I haven't seen him do anything like that in a while, and so you kind of forget he's even really part of the equation. But you put him next to a Jalen Carter and Milton Williams, and all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, like there are a number of ways that this unit can be the disruptive factor and force in the game. And then you're playing in a neutral field with a fast field that's not slippery like the field was 2 years ago. And all of a sudden that pass rush is able to be sort of the deciding factor. And it was cool to see. They're just they were a perfect unit. Fangio called an amazing game. And I think I bet the Eagles every round of the playoffs, including the Super Bowl, obviously. And I feel like that this is going to be a pretty memorable run.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this last week a little bit. When I interviewed Sean Alexander on Radio Row, he told me that the way the Super Bowl is so different from every other game is that the timeouts are so long and halftime is so long that you just feel super fresh the whole game, despite the occasion, because you're just getting so much time to recuperate. And maybe the way that most manifests itself is with pass rushers being able to go full tilt more often, because and I'm not sure if that's disproportionate to other regular season games, though I guess that would make sense that it would matter even more in a Super Bowl when you are fresher. But the Giants D-line, particularly the first Super Bowl, second Super Bowl, Brady kind of did whatever he wanted in the second half, or the Bucs D-line against the Chiefs a few years ago, Von Miller in the Super Bowl against the Panthers as well. And I think that, as much as Hurts won MVP, the game was ultimately defined by and decided by, really, when it was in the balance, by Josh Sweat and Milton Williams and these guys, and that Eagles D-line just completely overwhelming the Chiefs. Let's look ahead to Super Bowl market next year. Already the Eagles are favorites plus 650. The Ravens are 7-1. The Bills plus 750, same price as the Chiefs. The Lions are 8-1. The 49ers, who were, I believe, favorites to win the Super Bowl going into week 2 this season, they are 14-1. Bengals, Packers, Commanders, Texans. Is there anyone who leaps out to you here at price?
I'm surprised the Commanders aren't higher. personally. And maybe I'm projecting that they're going to make a move for Garrett. I don't have inside information on that, but Myles Garrett is kind of the key piece right now that really influences any Super Bowl bet for next year. He takes any of the defenses that are kind of in the mix and he would launch them right into the discussion as good as the Eagles. Problem for the Commanders is obviously the Cowboys will be probably healthier and the Eagles are in their division. So they have to still get past the current champs, which is going to be tricky. Certainly the fact that they're going to have a slightly easier schedule than the Eagles will be a factor because Eagles, of course, will have the first place schedule. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the takeaways could be other than, that team is for real. The Commanders, that is, and that they should be more priced in the line, in the same discussion as the Lions, in my opinion. So Niners are kind of a weird one because I honestly don't think that there is a clear and obvious just, we'll have a healthier season, therefore we'll be more dangerous and more effective. Like a lot of the kind of arc for some of these players is they're at the end of the line here, and I think the NFC West is still going to be quite competitive. I think it still probably goes through the LA Rams. The fact that the Rams have absolutely hit multiple home runs in the draft the last 2 years and that they're anchored by just a really, really strong, young core, to me makes them kind of in this discussion as well. So if I had to take swings, I'm looking at the NFC and I'm looking at Commanders and Rams at 20-1 and 25-1 respectively.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of the time when I'm looking at these type of markets, I am looking at why the market might be wrong, and often it is wrong this far out, or even just in general, just with overweighting team strength or perceived team strength and not focusing as much on path. And just the ease of getting a home playoff game, which, is easier for someone in the AFC South than potentially next year in, say, the NFC East. The ones that leapt out to me, the Cowboys being 66-1. I get that they had a terrible season. There's still a fair bit of talent on that team. Still Dak Prescott, who finished second in MVP 2 years ago. It's just the issue is that the Eagles and now the Commanders are fairly imposing in that division. 100-1 is not appetizing, but if there was anywhere hanging like 250-1 on the Jags with Liam Cohen potentially, revolutionizing Trevor Lawrence, who still does have, in theory, generational prospect pedigree and upside in a division that is fairly easy. The issue is with the AFC is that, teams like the Chargers or the Broncos or the Dolphins, like, just good luck getting through Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar in terms of mathing out money lines to get you to actual value on one of these outrights.
Yeah.
So, I think in a nutshell, the NFC is more the place to hunt, but there was nothing super appealing that leapt out to me. I do think just with how progressive Liam Cohen was in kind of revolutionizing for a second year in a row the Bucs offense and taking Mayfield to a new level, I do think the Jags, people came into the season thinking that the Jags might have like a top 10 defense. And if they can, fix the defense a little bit and then Cohen brings Trevor Lawrence into, the 21st century with some of his offensive concepts, then all of a sudden that team might be interesting, but probably more interesting for the division than actually, the Jags winning the Super Bowl, which seems a little bit outrageous.
Yeah, that's a fun commentary. As far as path goes, to me, the NFC North still looks really, really tough. A lot of good teams, a lot of good players. That to me throws a little bit of cold water on Lions at price at 8-1. Similarly, the AFC West is going to be tougher for the Chiefs to just run away with. You have now 3 bona fide coaches in your division who can at least run capable programs, and 3 teams that seem willing to continue to invest and try to build both through the draft and through free agency. And it's you have a Broncos team that's interesting to me just because presumably you've hit on Knicks, and now you have kind of the one of the premier ways to field competitive football teams, which is you're not paying your quarterback anything. So, I think the West looks a little bit more crowded this year than it has been in years past. The the AFC East looks pretty soft still. So the Bills probably have a decent chance to get the 1 seed next year, I would say. Especially if they can do anything to fortify that defense that you mentioned already in the pod. But Ravens, I think, pretty clearly have a tough head-to-head with the Bengals twice a year. That makes that a little bit of a coin flip. But Browns and Steelers look like they will be a little bit less of a factor, certainly this year. Browns in particular. I as you kind of look across the landscape, I think you are keying NFC. I think you're avoiding NFC North, and I think you're probably avoiding NFC South too, because I don't think any of those teams are going to be good enough to win any playoff games. So.
I agree. Okay, the Premier League returns this weekend as Everton attempts to win its 4th straight match when they face Crystal Palace. Coverage begins at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Okay, NBA West outright market. The Thunder continue their trickle down towards minus money. They are plus 105 at the moment. The Nuggets are 6-1. The Lakers are 8-1. Perhaps a little less interesting with the Mark Williams trade rescinded, losing some of their variance. The Grizzlies are 11-1. The Mavs are 15-1, and that's going to get longer with AD. I suspect he may be out for the season. And then we have the Clippers at 16-1. Would you take the Thunder over the field at this point?
I would. Yeah. And my fare for the Thunder is minus 130 right now.
Okay. Any long shot of interest to take
Clippers,
down the Thunder?
I think Clippers is the only one that I would really have any interest in. So right now, I think it's the 1 seed Thunder. Lock it up. I mean, that's 99.9 at this point. 2 seed and the second best power rated team for the regular season for me is the Grizzlies, but I'm not taking anything. I have nothing to do with that team futures wise, because the Ja Morant sort of acrobatic injury potential, particularly when we get into these really physical playoff series, like, no, thank you. Like, at some point that is a tail risk that I'm not interested in. Similarly, Rockets, who I would power rate as a top 3 right now in the West, is not a team that I'm really willing to go to war with in terms of just the youth and inexperience and navigating a playoff series. I think it'll take a little bit of time. Lakers would be 4 for me right now, but that defense is atrocious. I was trying hard to figure out the Mark Williams trade and what that ultimately did to their defense, because he wasn't really standing out to me as like this clear and obvious defensive anchor. And so I was like, they might not be getting what they think they're getting out of that. And this still might be a very, very offensive focused team in the playoffs, but that might be enough firepower to win a series. So who knows? Now I've kind of just now settled on that. Okay, this is a highlight reel team. This is not a for real team that's going to be truly competitive. I am very down on the Nuggets. I do not think that they're being rated correctly right now at all. I think the Westbrook injury is a little bit important, which is, I guess, not a good thing to be saying out loud for the Denver Nuggets right now. But his hamstring injury to me is concerning. I think he's going to miss a couple more weeks here, and the rest of the team is just, it's banged up. You're not seeing especially impressive play out of all of these role players this year, and I don't know exactly how they get healthy. And again, as we've talked about for the millionth time, they have put a lot of miles on Jokic already this season. Them falling a little bit short in the playoffs because of fatigue, I would think is a pretty high likelihood. So that leads us to the Clippers, who I still think that their defense is very real. I think the fact that what we're seeing now from them in their quality of play is not anywhere close to their final form, because as they continue to get Kawhi right, he could be 80% of the player he was at his peak last year. And if that guy is on your team in the Western Conference, you could very well find yourself in the Western Conference Finals. I think their home court advantage is real in a playoff series, which is fun. It's they have a defense that you can pretty reliably believe in. So that's kind of the shot I would shoot if you don't really fancy getting involved at Thunder plus 105, because it's not enough juice, and there's not enough fun in that. But my fare for Thunder right now is saying bet them at Eddie plus number.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Thunder, they should be favored over the field. I think it's largely just a bet on health, really. If they
Yeah.
keep everyone healthy, I'd be kind of stunned
They're
if
so
if
freaking deep though,
anyone.
man, too.
Yeah,
Like SGA health.
yes, yeah, it's basically it. Like if they lose either Jalen Williams or Chet, just one of them, still think they're probably better than the rest of these teams because they have guys like Hartenstein and Caruso who
Mm-hmm.
can step up into increased roles theoretically. So yeah, go parlay the Thunder into Connor Hellebuck to win the Hart Trophy. I don't think that's the play.
Ooh.
But with the Clippers, so watched an ungodly amount of Clippers basketball this year,
Okay.
which has actually been a fairly enjoyable experience for the most
Yeah.
part. Because I have this big Norman Powell, most improved player position, so I need to be watching Norm, need to be in step with his cadences.
Mm-hmm.
And they've hit a bit of a skid where they lost 3 straight to the Raptors, Lakers, and Pacers, and did not cover themselves in glory in any of those games. And then I stayed up till like 12:47 a.m. Eastern watching Clippers Jazz. The Clippers, because I was like, we can't, because their next game is against Memphis, which is going to be a coin flip. So it's like, well, geez, if they lose to the Jazz and they lose to the Grizz, 5-game skid going into All-Star isn't great. So they're 18.5-point favorites against the Jazz. The Jazz offense, they've got these guys I've never heard. I don't know Micah Potter or whatever his name is. He's just launching threes. Svi Mikhailuk is like taking fadeaway contested twos that are like hitting the top of the backboard. It had to have been the worst team that any team has put out all season. Jordan Clarkson's taken like pull-up threes with 21 seconds on the shot clock, literally. And the Clippers, they sleepwalk through the game. It's like a 2-point game with 6 minutes to go, and then they end up winning. But this is all to say that I think that Bogdanovic and Ben Simmons are actually really going to help the Clippers because the bottom of this Clippers rotation, which I'm all too familiar with, is just not good at all. Now, they got rid of Kevin Porter Jr., which was just absolutely necessary because he's horrific. And if they replaced him with just air, it would be an upgrade. But they're going to replace him with Simmons and Bogdan, who I think can still be useful if he can get his kind of lower body right and healthy. But against the Jazz, the Clippers, who were theoretically at full strength outside of their 2 new additions, they were running lineups out at the end of quarters of there's James Harden, Chris Dunn, Amir Coffey, Nick Batum, and Kobe Brown. It's like, that's just untenable. And that lineup actually did really well in the Jazz game, but like, it's not viable to have like Kobe Brown as the, just out there. Amir Coffey is a guy who's like not offensive in any regard, but doesn't really do anything. Like, he's just kind of out there. He knocks down like 36% of his threes, which are always pretty much wide open. He's like an okay defender, but not great. But I think that Bogdan's shooting and Simmons's ball handling are really going to help because the starting 5 is fantastic. Like Harden is still, by definition, all-star caliber. Norm Powell is, an outlier good offensive player. Defensively, he's been better this year, but he's not a plus on that end. But offensively, he's been phenomenal. Zubac has been outstanding this year and is one of the most underrated defenders in the league. Derek Jones Jr. is very solid. The swing piece, as it always is, and as it has been for 5 years or whatever, is just Kawhi, who, having watched a lot of Kawhi, and I'd be interested for your thoughts. He looks spry and he looks athletic to me, and he's beating his man. He just looks completely out of rhythm, and he's playing like a headless chicken. Like he's just athleting out there. It seems like he'll get to his spot and then he just won't shoot. It's like, well, I've watched you for 10 years get to that spot and make that shot. And now you're just like not shooting the ball. Like he's throwing these bizarre turnovers. He doesn't seem to have the court map. Like he just hasn't played a lot of basketball. He's played 14 games this year. So what have you thought so far of Kawhi?
I think you nailed it. And I think he could be there by April. Like, I don't want to be seeing him play his best basketball right now. I would much rather see him running around like a headless chicken, but looking spry. This is kind of this to me, at least. And the reason I would even say anything positive about the Clippers at all is just because of there's an upper tail, there's a ceiling raising factor of him being, somewhat close to the player that we saw at his peaks last year, which, was pretty clearly top 5 in the NBA at that point. What speaking of that Jazz Clippers game that you brought up, what do you think of Keontae George's minus 39 in 33 minutes of action?
The Jazz are one of the worst defenses imaginable. Like they just have no one. There's no like Harden just hitting Zoo on these like layup, like pick and roll dunks. Like Zubac was almost surprised. Like, oh, it's another dunk. There's no one here.
Yeah. So Clippers for me, I mean, a lot of their kind of future depends on either kind of the 6 or 7 seed, in my opinion, because I'd like them to be on the other side of the draw from the Thunder. If they have to go through the Thunder in the 1/8, then that throws a lot of cold water on their futures, because they're gonna have to do it themselves. And I'd rather kind of them have their shot in the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals than earlier than that. So if the Clippers ultimately rise through the month of March and into April, and they get to the 4-5, that's not the worst thing. Obviously, they're out of the potential for a play-in debacle. But for me right now, I think the Mavericks are pretty. I agree with you. I think they're a write-off. I agree that Anthony Davis, if he comes back, this is not a team that's going to be especially competitive. And I don't have a strong read on what's going on with the Kings and the Suns right now, but they do feel like they are pretty locked into play-in. Kind of situational. Standing. And then similarly with the Warriors, like Kings, Suns, Warriors, like one of those teams is going to get the 8 seed and be plus 800 against the Thunder in the 1/8.
Yeah, I think the good thing with the Clippers is that I would guess that their 2 most likely outcomes are being the 6 or the 7, to your point, just given that these teams behind them now, like the Mavs, I think AD might be done for the season. Like he's out for a month. He may get surgery, may just be completely done. Like they're already 2 losses behind the Clippers. So they're very unlikely to overtake the Clippers. The Clippers have a 3-game lead on Sacramento and Phoenix, who they are, I think, materially better than Golden State as well. And so it's just, are they going to leapfrog Minnesota for 6? And, can they potentially even catch a Lakers team if the Lakers, who have, I think, extreme kind of low end tail outcomes for their defense, like maybe the Lakers just aren't that good without it, with Jackson Hayes starting at center. I think they'll be fine because the offense is going to be amazing, but who knows there? The Rockets continue to slide. I think the thing with the Clippers is I don't think they can beat Oklahoma City, but I do think that if Kawhi, who, like peak Kawhi Leonard was like a +7, +8 type of player by EPM. And the recent vintage of Kawhi, when he's been healthy, has been like a +5, +6. If he can just get to like being a +4 player, a +3.5 player by playoff time, I think there's a pretty good chance that the Clippers could have the second best team in the West, or the third best team in the West. I think the Nuggets would still probably be better than them, but I think it'd be close. But like, I don't think they're going to be materially worse than the Nuggets or the Grizz. So if you could get a each way price on the Clippers to win the West, so that you don't have to be as concerned about them beating Oklahoma City, I think that might be the play. But
sounds like you think I'm being too hard on the Nuggets then.
I mean, it's still Jokic. Jamal Murray has looked a lot better the past month as opposed to the disaster of his start of the season. I think Westbrook's just good. Like Westbrook is just, I think he's just a good, solid contributor who seems to have chemistry with Jokic. He's really improved as a defender, to his credit.
You think the hamstring is short term? Like he'll be back after the All-Star break, no problem?
Well, I think he'll be back by the time that they really need him. And I think that they are. So right now, as we record, the Nuggets are in the 3 seed. Houston's going the wrong direction fast. So I think that they'll still have enough to get a 3 seed and be on the opposite side of the bracket to Oklahoma City. I don't really think they can beat Oklahoma City if Oklahoma City is healthy, particularly now that OKC, like the only way that Jokic has really ever had trouble is when you can do something that I think only OKC and Minnesota have been able to do historically, where you can have like a big body on him and then have like a roving rim protector shot blocker. So Minnesota obviously did it with Cat and Gobert last year, and then and Oklahoma City can replicate that with Hartenstein and Chet if they need to, or maybe they just play him straight up with Chet, who probably would have won Defensive Player of the Year if he'd stayed healthy. So, and also like if you thought that Jokic had some issues with like the swiping defense of the Wolves last year in the playoffs, like get ready for Oklahoma City, who might be the most swarming kind of handsy steals generating defense that the league has ever seen. So yeah, I just don't think anyone's beating Oklahoma City if they stay healthy.
We agree.
Cool. All right. Watch the biggest names in sports talk, including Mike Florio, Dan Patrick, Dan Lebitard, and Matthew Berrios. They cover the biggest moments on and off the field each weekday on the NBC Sports Now channel. It is now available on Peacock and free on most streaming platforms. Learn more at nbcsports.com/now.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out with the West make-miss playoff market. This market has been thrown into a little bit of chaos with the Anthony Davis injury, which has ripple effects. I think this was headed to quite a projectable conclusion before that, where I think that Dallas and Sacramento were probably going to be the 8-9. Phoenix was going to slide out because they're not very good, and they have a brutal remaining schedule, and Golden State was going to leap them to get the 9 or 10, and the Spurs and Suns would miss out. But with AD now cooked for, it looks like, a month at least, how do you see this shaking out, and are there any bets at price?
The fun part about this market is that one of these teams is going to miss the play-in entirely. So there's a big, there's a big hole where your miss is not even a sweat of they have to lose 1 or 2 games in the play-in. And I think the Mavericks fall into that hole right now. Obviously the vibes are not great. The more time we have had from this, this trade, the less it makes sense, honestly. And I think the AD injury is massive. Derek Lively also, he was kind of an important young piece for, building anything chemistry wise with AD. Neither guy, if we see either guy play this year, I think I'm going to be a little surprised. So now all of a sudden, this is a pretty fatally flawed team as far as the roster goes, and I don't think Kidd can rescue this thing. So if I think the Mavericks slide out of contention to the tune of probably missing the play-in, which opens up the door for the Warriors and the Suns to at least being able to fight for their opportunity. I think the Kings are the toughest one for me to kind of really wrap my head around, because as I put together my number for that team and do synthetically build from the bottom up player level modeling, they've always been like they've underperformed what they ought to be for most of this season. And I can see a world where the luck bounces their way a bit, and they play a little bit better in the clutch, and then all of a sudden they're winning games by 1 or 2 instead of losing them, and they clearly are in sort of the 7-8 mix, and that would push Suns Warriors into sort of the 9-10 fight, and it would give Kings a chance to take on the Timberwolves or the Clippers or the Lake, probably Timberwolves or Clippers for the 7-8. I would obviously favor both the Clippers and the Timberwolves slightly over the Kings in that 7-8, but then in the 8 versus 9-10 winner, I think the Kings would be pretty decent favorites. The most fun, entertaining thing to happen from the standpoint of just people in the West Coast who love basketball would be if the Warriors knock out Durant and company in the 9-10 and then go on to play at Sacramento for the last playoff spot. That would be very enjoyable, as there is obviously no love lost between Sacramento and Golden State. That said, I think the Kings get the 8th spot, and I would take currently. I think the no price on the Warriors is reasonable at -200. I think the no price on Suns is reasonable at -325. I don't have much interest in getting deeper into either of those books. There's also a world where the Suns fall out of play in contention. They actually had a little bit more of a stirring. Kind of bring the locker room together type of performance the other day that I was not expecting in their win, ironically against the Jazz, where they go to OT against the Jazz, but ultimately win by 8. And yeah, I think that one of Mavs Suns is your 11 seed. And I think Warriors Kings get one as a fight for your last spot.
The Suns are an absolute mess, notwithstanding that impressive win from the Clouds against the Jazz. And to be fair, the Jazz were playing all their guys basically in that one, and the Suns, from memory, didn't have Durant or Beal, so it was impressive to come back from. I think they were down 4 points with 4 seconds left and forced OT and then won. But that team, just even at full strength, like they're just not any good. Right. I watched the end of their OT game against the Blazers when we were in New Orleans, and they're so small. They don't have any big man. Nick Richards is not the answer. Mason Plumlee is not the answer. And then the offense, it's the same thing as last year, where there's just no alchemy. Like there's no additive plays that involve, or at least there's a dearth of them that involve both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker combining to emphasize their skills. It's just like, Bradley Beal dribble around for 6 seconds, get Durant on a switch against the big, and then let Kevin Durant cook while Devin Booker stands in the corner. Like, how is this the optimal offense? And the fact that it's happened under both Vogel and Budenholzer suggests that maybe it's like the players just don't want it. That's just how they want to play. But they're just not very good, and they have a brutal schedule the rest of the way. So I think they're going to miss the playoffs. They might get saved by this AD injury in terms of making the play-in, but I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. The bets that I would make in this market right now, anything plus money on the Mavs to miss, because I think AD is going to be out for quite a while. The Clippers -275 to make, I think, is pretty generous given their lead and their scope to get the 6th seed and avoid the play-in entirely. And then I think that, a bad scenario for them might be even like getting the 7th seed. And in that case, they would have 2 chances and home court for both those opportunities. So I think the Clippers are north of 75% to make the playoffs. Last thing that I wanted to say on this, with the Mavs, I think it was an interesting kind of betting phenomenon in a way, Anthony Davis's injury, where a lot of people give me crap for like trying to diagnose injuries in real time and kind of not acknowledging that, at least with the stuff that I bet on, it's kind of important to at least have like a ballpark gauge of what the injury might be. And yeah, it's not always the best idea to just follow in Twitter doctors, and there are some bad ones out there, but there are some much better ones out there too. And everything with AD is that he had an ab strain. He came back early. He pulled something that was lower than his ab, and they had to, and it was non-contact, and they had to foul to get him out of the game. And so after the game, he says, "Oh, I'm fine. It's minor." I was like, "Really? It's minor? You re-aggravated something and you had to foul to get out of the game." And there was a window there for a couple of days where the market was treating AD's words as, yeah, this is minor. And then it comes out that he's out for a month. Like sometimes yeah, I get it. It's a leap of faith and it's never 100%, but you have to kind of look at it probabilistically of like, you know, there are some good Twitter doctors out there. I think Brian Suter is really solid. And he was like, no, this seems like this could be something where it could be like a sports hernia where he needs surgery. He's out the season.
That was the first thing that I thought of as well. Yeah. And oh, by the way, it's AD and he's made of paper. So
yeah,
if you want to build your probability density function, put a little extra in. It's going to be worse than you think.
if you re-aggravate a muscle strain to the point where your team needs to foul to get you out of the game and you don't come back in the game, just in general, you're probably not going to play the next game. And it's probably worse than it was. And it initially had to keep him out 5 games. So that's even like last year, like Malik Monk, when he does his MCL against the Mavs, when Luka Doncic falls on him, there was uncertainty as to how long that would be. Well, he's hurt his MCL in some way and he couldn't bear weight on it. If you do your MCL and you cannot bear weight on it, then you're probably out for like 4 to 6 weeks. And that means that you're out for the season and the 6th man of the year race is completely different. And sometimes you need to at least try and get some sort of gauge on that to give you an edge over a market that usually just takes reporting completely at face value or just, you know, acts very conservatively. And if you can have enough of a gauge where probabilistically you're doing a better job than the market, then it's going to create bets to be made. But anyway, little tangent. But yeah, I think the main thing is that and Nate Duncan talks about this a bit too, is like, if you leave a game with a muscle strain and you don't come back and you're ruled out, you're probably going to be out a couple of weeks. And if the market isn't baking that into any markets around that, then there might be a bet to be made. Cool. All right, we are done for today. We're going to talk about the Eastern Conference tomorrow. But for now, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, go Birds, and we'll see you tomorrow.